Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we are looking at the third and final part of our three-part series on Collaborate. So we've got a bit of a recap on session 1 and 2 coming up in case you weren't at those sessions. But today is part 3, and that's going to be brought to you once again by Phil Reeves, Education and Media Consultant. My name's Tom Jeffrey, Education and Media Technician. That's not my name. The whole thing isn't my name. My name's Tom Jeffrey, but I'm one of the Education and Media Technicians at Caseware UK, and I'll be monitoring your questions and making sure everything runs smoothly. In terms of your questions, we'll jump to the housekeeping slide. We can see we've got the Q&A option there on the toolbar. If you pop your questions into there, then we'll get back to you as soon as we can. I can put those to Phil during the session, and any questions will be included in a Q&A document. We are recording this session, so the recording will be uploaded to the knowledge base, and any Q&A document will accompany that. We're also going to put the recording on our YouTube channel, so you can share that with anybody who wasn't able to attend and watch it back later. That's the housekeeping covered. So I'll hand over to Phil and we'll have a look at the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And yeah, as Tom's already mentioned today, guys, thank you for attending today's webinar. Obviously, after we've had part 1 and part 2, so as I chuck the agenda on the screen, we are just going to start with a quick overview for anyone who hasn't attended the first parts, but we won't go into them too much detail because, as Tom has already mentioned, we do have a recording of them available on our knowledge base and also on our YouTube channel. But today's webinar, we're going to focus specifically on some of the customization options available within the Caseware cloud. So template customizations, so it's for some of the SE products. And then we're also going to look at the cloud customizations. So these are quite general areas that people may not necessarily be aware that they can customize or how to customize them. So things like welcome emails for new staff, or those initial login screens that you see when we log into the Caseware cloud, we can customize those as and when we need to, so that we can add a little bit more of our own company's flavor to that, to those login screens, add logos in, messages, things like that. We're going to touch on some further security, things like two-factor authentication that you can activate within the Caseware cloud, how you do that, having a look at some of the settings within the cloud itself. So one thing we would like to point out is that some of the options that we are going to see today will vary as to whether you'll be able to access them. As we mentioned when we were talking about security within the first part of this webinar series, different access levels will be provided for different users, and obviously those access levels will provide you with more of a range of what you can do within the Caseware cloud. So as and when we go through the different areas, I'll point out which access level you need, and obviously we'll touch upon the different roles just so you're aware of what they are. Again, just as a quick recap. As I say, we'll touch upon part 1 and 2. I'll just jump into the cloud. Just want to make, when we're looking at customizations, just want to make you aware as to what we're referring to. So this is our cloud server. And as you can see, we've got our own fictitious Caseware Accountants logo, and also a little message, Caseware Accountants for training purposes message when we log into the Caseware cloud. All of this is stuff that you guys will be able to customize on your own cloud servers, obviously depending on access rights. So when I log in, and I get the password wrong. There we go. So when I log into the Caseware cloud, you can see on my screen, it automatically opens up on the entity screen. Now, again, from those of you that watched the first webinar, part of this webinar series, you'll have noticed I mentioned that it would have loaded up on the activities timeline. Now, that is something that I've set up personally on my own cloud server. So things, as we've mentioned, like that login screen, emails to different users, are things that we can customize on our own cloud server to be able to determine, as I say, where we're going to open up on the server, what we're going to see when we're logging in initially to the Caseware cloud. And there, as I said, or emails that we can send to users. both when they're joining and also when we're sending notifications to our own clients. So if we're using some of the tools, again, as we touched upon in the first part of this webinar series, when we were talking about file requests, we can adjust what the file request contains within it, whether we have like a signature within that as well. All of this is done via the 3 lines button on the left-hand side. So again, our navigation option, if I scroll down, we've got the settings at the bottom of this list. Now within here, by activating the settings or by accessing, sorry, the settings, I am personally on this cloud server set up as a top level admin. But when we go to the roles, so if I go to, security and role permissions, the options that you're going to see and the changes that I can make will be applicable to those that have got admin rights and also those that have got settings admin rights. Again, if it applies for staff, then staff admin will also be applicable. Entities admin will also be applicable. But these options with regards to the organization will be for those settings and settings admin and admin users. But things that you can add on, things like organization name. Again, Caseware will by default, when we set up your cloud server, include an organization name, but you may want to tweak that for any reason. You can come into these profile options within the organization, drop down and adjust that accordingly, and also put your own website in. So this website will populate at the bottom of emails that are sent to various users. So obviously via file information requests or other emails that you may send. We can also go in and start adding in our address, phone numbers, we can change languages throughout the Caseware cloud. And then one thing to be aware of is that when we do make these changes, at the bottom there is a save button. Obviously, again, a lot of areas within the Caseware cloud do save automatically, but these settings you will need to press the save button to be able to apply those. When we're talking about that initial sign-in page, and again, customizations within the cloud, the login screen, you can see we can provide some welcome text for when users log into the Caseware cloud. We can add our own organization logo if we want to. So all of this is about making the cloud more user specific. So we're making it our own cloud server rather than just, keep sticking with what Caseware produces as a default. We're starting to make it, a little bit more friendly for our own users. And also because this login screen is going to be seen by your clients when they go in, and if they're sharing information with you through the client information request, through the file requests within the cloud itself. Obviously, when we set up those users as contacts, so our own clients as contacts, we want to make sure that we give them a nice welcome text message. We make sure that they know that they're coming onto our cloud by providing an organization logo. And all of that can be done from this sign-in customization page. Speaking of emails, obviously the emails that get sent, we've got the settings, we've got the email settings. So within here, you can see any email that gets sent to your users will have the standard email setting, do not reply, and then it'll be at, and then your cloud server name, and then .com. You cannot change that option. But what you can start to change is the email display name. So again, how do we want our email to be, or what do we want our email to be displayed as? And then if they're new users, do we want some user text? So for us, we ask them to just give us a number, a call, or use the frequently asked questions. So again, we're customizing the cloud to make it more specific to our firm. So again, if anyone has any issues, do they contact I don't know, the IT team or the super user or the admin within the cloud server itself? When we scroll down as well, we've got the option to include signatures. So again, we're looking at sending these emails externally and both internally. So do we want to include a nice signature at the bottom of it? This by default, the email was sent via Caseware Cloud on behalf of. So you again might want to say certain information about your firm. It's all firm specific, so you can change this. There's no set wording that you have to use. And then obviously we can also include the organization logo as part of the email banner. So again, when we're sending and receiving emails from the Caseware Cloud, do we want to include the email banner as part of that, or our logo, sorry, within that email banner as part of the email that we're sending across to users. So this, again, it's all about personalizing and customizing the Caseware Cloud to make it more specific to you and your users without just using the generic information that's provided by us. Now, speaking of customizing the Caseware Cloud itself, we spoke on the second session about filters and the template, and also as part of the first session, and also within the applications themselves. So if I just, again, used our three lines button, sorry, to go to a template, we spoke on here, there's a lot of information on this particular server that I'm using, but we spoke on about the views and how we can adjust the views. So I think the one we looked at specifically was entities, and we had the basic view, and we talked about how you can have detailed views and status views as a default free. Now, if you look in our server, we've also got other views that are available that we've created for assisting with our workload of managing these particular entities. And this is all something that, again, you guys can do to be able to tailor and manage your Caseware Cloud to be able to see only the information that relates to the entities that is specific to you and specific to the users within your company. So if we go down to the settings option, we have the option within here to manage the views. So within the customization options, we have view management, and you can see that we can view and retain and control the views that are available to different users throughout the Caseware Cloud. You don't necessarily need to come to the settings to do this as well. If I go back into entities, we can use this drop down to access the manage option. And here we can manage the views as well. So you've got two options. You can go into settings, go to the customization drop down, where you'll get the option to for the view management, or you can go to manage views from here, and it takes us back to that same option. Now, in terms of the views that you can manage pretty much any view available on the Caseware Cloud. So we're looking at entities, staff, as you can see there, contacts. When we're looking at even individually at the individual applications within the Caseware Cloud. For those of you that use SmartSync, we've got the working papers option. So we can go through and we can set up individual views for working papers itself. So to show examples of ones that we might include would be to show audit versions. So for those of you that may use working papers on the desktop to do audits, and obviously you want to manage the audit versions of your files, you can create a view for working papers to be able to view the versions of those audit files. So again, if there's something you want to see specifically, then feel free to let us know. We have got a video on it that we can provide to you. But to create these views, we just simply go to New. We select our appropriate view. So there are, as I say, you won't see as many as this because you won't have access to all of the different applications, but you will see the standard ones. So file view, staff view, contact view, entities view, working papers view, company's house submissions view will be available. So for those of you that do submissions through the Caseware Cloud, you will have an option to include a view for that. But if we want to create a new view, we just select the view that we want to create. So we were looking at entities, so I'll stick with the entities view. We give it a name. So I'm going to call this Phil's view just for now. Again, more likely to call it something specific for you guys. And then we can go through and we can start to add columns in. Now you have to have a name column. Obviously you want to be able to see the name of your entity, but there are other columns that we can go through and add in. We can add in things like, as we can see here, the business number, when the file or entity was created. We can go through and we can set up entity numbers. Some of these won't be necessarily applicable to this specific view, so entities view, but things like last name, if we're doing a staff view, again, we might want to see that. Fiscal year, things like that. So what we're going to do is just add in a few. So we'll add in entity number. We'll add in some tags. We'll add in a type. And then we'll go in and add in, sorry, we won't put type, we'll use organization type instead. And again, if anyone's unsure as to what the organization type is, we talked about adding entities in during part 2 of this webinar series. But then we'll save that. And as you can see, that will add in the tags, or sorry, the columns that we've selected. Now we can change the column headers using the input cells here. So I can change this to entity name if I want to. And I can also adjust the width for these columns or sort them using the icons on the right-hand side. So if I press save, that will save that view that I've created. So now if I go to the drop down, you can see fields view is available. Now, when I select this as the admin, again, I have the option to set this as a default. I can also adjust whom this is available to. So is it available to everyone, or is it just available to staff or to contacts? I can also edit the view if I want to. And as I said, I can set it as default for myself, for everyone, or for staff, for contacts. I can also delete it. You can delete any custom views that have been created. You can't delete the standard ones that are provided by Caseware. So if I go onto one of these predefined ones, which are basic and detailed, you can see I can't go through and delete those. I can only set it as the default. Now, just to see how that works, if I go to entities, straight for that to relog me in, and I can go into the drop down here, and I'd have the option for fields view, which I could go through and add in. So you can see we haven't gone through and added any organization types for these entities. But if I was to do that, so I just select one, go to our pen icon, add in an organization type, it's private limited. Click yes to that, save that. And as you can see, that organization type will pull through. So those custom views are very much about you guys being able to control what your users see as and when they're accessing the Caseware cloud. So we're not looking specifically at just the standard views provided by Caseware, but actually tailoring that information so that we can see a broader, more comprehensive overview of what we need to see as a firm. Now, those customizations, as we've mentioned, aren't just specific to the cloud. They are also, we can also customize the templates within the Caseware cloud. So things like, again, this is more for those that are currently using the SE platform and the SE products. So like your company audit Merciers, or those that might be using UK microfiling. Obviously, this is still applicable to those of you that aren't, because obviously in the next couple of years, we're starting or hoping to expand our availability of cloud products. So we want to be able to have an understanding of how to customize these. Now, I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, because we do have a webinar in a couple of weeks looking specifically at cloud audit customizations. But just to give you an idea of where you need to go and what you need to access, if I go to settings, we can start to customize individual templates themselves. So again, on this settings, we have the list of applications available. I can go down, so we go to UK company audit Mercia, or it could be obviously HAT users. You've got your HAT templates or the UK microfiling template. But we can go to manage template if we select any of these templates. And what we can see here, we've got a lot of different templates available on our server. But we would have the option to open a draft, which will open up the draft of a template that we're currently working on. We can also then publish this template if we need to. So the reason why we may want to obviously customize a template could be for things like building in our own checklists, or tailoring, tweaking the checklists for a specific type of entity that we're working on. So you can see we've added in a custom checklist into this document. We can go through and we can start to tailor some of the client information requests if we need to. We can go through and even start to tailor some of the preliminary tailoring checklists. So for example, we can set up default responses. As you can see here, we've set this up to say no. We can add new responses in. So include firm document library, add a document library. Again, I won't go through in too much detail as to how we do this, but just to give you an idea of some of the changes that you can make. Now, the benefit of these template customizations and the changes within the templates is that they will then be applicable to any file that we create after we've published this as a template. So we can go in, we can make the customizations, and then we can publish the template, which obviously then allows us to use those checklists that we've created, or use those new query questions that we've added in, for example, the client information request. Or if we've added in questions to the preliminary tailoring checklist, we can go through and we can make those available on every file that is created from that point. Obviously, when we're customizing, again, we can go through and we can add in letterhead and logos that can then be applicable to the file itself. But again, that customization and a more detailed look at specifically the company audit Mercia template will be available from within, or when we run our cloud audit template customization webinar, sorry, in a few weeks. When we're looking at some of the other, when I said about specific templates, when we're looking at working papers security, we can go through and we can start to activate security from within the cloud to working papers. So we can go through and we can start to create new roles. So again, if you currently use a data store within the Caseware working papers, you can actually set up the same options as that data store within the Caseware cloud and enable that security. So again, looking at further security, we can go through and we can manage the access rights that users have within working papers directly from the Caseware cloud. So we can, again, just as an example, we can go and create a new role. So I could call this my accounts assistant role, or audit assistant, or again, partners, whatever we want to call it. And then we can go through and we can start to determine what these users can do, both within working papers, but also within case view. So again, we can go through in terms of files. Do we want them to be able to import data? Well, probably. I can't imagine it be too much use if people can't put information into that file. So we can go through and say, yeah, we want the accounts assistant, sorry, to be able to import data. We want them to be able to, I don't know, modify or copy components, bring information in. But we may not want them to be able to do things like unlock files. So again, you can use the Caseware cloud and the security settings within the cloud to be able to not just manage the cloud, but also manage working papers itself. And again, if people want more information on the link between working papers and the Caseware cloud in terms of security, please let us know. And just finally, because I mentioned about two-factor authentication, when we're looking at security, we talked about roles and permissions during our initial webinar, but we've also got the option to set password settings within the Caseware cloud. So we've got minimum password strength, moderate, strong, or very strong. Obviously, it's not going to be a weak option. We don't want people setting weak passwords. But you can see some examples of moderate passwords. Again, this doesn't look particularly strong, but you can see it would be. No one's really going to predict you're going to go to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down to L when you're putting a password in. But you can see some examples of very strong ones requiring the use of symbols as well. But more importantly, we've got the option for two-factor authentication. So this is obviously when it comes to publishing and integrating with Caseware Cloud, we can determine whether we require people to use the two-factor authentication. We can also manage sessions within the options here. So we can say it was required for all staff or all contacts if we want to, and then obviously then provide a time when the user is allowed to skip that settings till. So for example, in this case, we can set it till the 2nd of the 6th, which I believe is in a couple of weeks, or it's next week. Or we can set it so that they have to use the two-factor authentication every 30 days or every sign-in. And again, if you are going to look to change any of these security settings, always make sure that we press the save button. And also, when I went through about the working paper security, make sure if you do go through and start to manage the security within the Caseware Cloud, that you use the security default option as and when you do that. Okay, so that takes us to, we've got 5 minutes left. I can see from the chat feature that we've had a couple of questions come through. Again, Tom, I don't know if they're relevant for the or worth asking for the webinar.
I'm not sure if it's something that we're going to be able to answer on the session live, although you might have more insight than I do. I'm currently in discussion with our product team about engagement tracking in the cloud for audit engagements. So for clients that are using engagement tracking within their Collaborate environment. Mm-hmm. We know that on accounts and tax, you go to engagement tracking and it lists out your engagements. The Audit Tracker is currently in beta, is not behaving in the same way. As I say, I'm currently finding out some more detail from the product team. I'm not sure if you have any further comment at the moment on that.
I would leave it to the I would leave it to the accounts managers. I assume it comes up with something like this.
That's right. Yeah.
So ours is similar. I would,
but
comment on it.
it is currently in beta, whereas the accounts and tax are out of beta, so they are fully functional. So we will find out some more detail and get back to you when we can. But otherwise, no, we haven't got any additional questions, but you can continue to submit your questions over the next few minutes, and we'll get back to you either straight away or after the session.
If anyone does have any specific areas that they want to look at when it comes to the cloud, I'll just brought this screen up on slide, up on the screen. Hopefully you can see it. But we do have a Caseware Cloud e-course that is available from our learning management system. And we've also got Getting Started guides looking at specific areas of the Caseware Cloud, and obviously our good old trusted knowledge base that Tom's going to just provide us with a link for in a moment, where you can find all sorts of articles on the Caseware Cloud. There's a specific section within the knowledge base for the Caseware Cloud. So again, feel free to search for it. Again, when I'm talking about two-factor authentication and security, there are many articles on the Caseware Cloud looking at those areas. But now I'll pass you back to Tom.
Thanks, Phil. So if we jump to the next slide, just a reminder of how you can continue to submit your questions there. But we've got just a summary of some of the upcoming sessions on the next slide, I believe. You all know the events page by now, I'm sure, but caseware.co.uk/events. And you can see the agendas there and register to attend our sessions as you have done for today. As Phil said, we've got some cloud audit template customization webinars, a two-part on the 16th and 30th of June. So if you wanted to find out more about the customization side for engagements specifically, rather than in the overall Collaborate environment, then please do join us on those sessions. And all of them are recorded, as you know, and they go onto our YouTube channel. So we'll jump to the next slide, which is just a quick plug on our media outlets. LinkedIn page, Client Services Caseware UK Limited. You can follow us there and we'll keep you up to date with the latest news and events. And our YouTube channel has our webinar playlist and lots of other playlists containing quick vids and bite-sized guidance. And finally, the knowledge base, kb.caseware.co.uk, for our webinar recordings are on there as well. We also have all of our articles and quick vids are on there, and any relevant downloads if you have access to that area. So that brings us to the end of this session, and indeed the end of the Collaborate series. As we've said, all recordings will be available on YouTube and on the knowledge base. We'll upload this one very shortly. But if you have any questions on anything that we've covered, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day and your week, and we'll see you on the next webinar.